Yo, it's August 18th, 2023 at about 6:05 p.m. and back looking at for the seventh day in a row, Hurricane Hilary, which is now a Category 4 hurricane, which is more powerful than it was originally estimated to reach, or a higher status hurricane. Let's look at the 18Z, which is about 95% downloaded. So as you can see, it still has it making a landfall somewhere around Southern California. It could be the Baja Peninsula, but it could also be like just south, it looks Ensenada and this area, or it could be San Diego. At this point, it'll just be dependent on the slight variations that I think could occur. So let's watch this one more time. You can see a significant amount of tropical moisture kicking over the SoCal area as well as up into Nevada. And, you know, um, one thing you'll notice is there is a tropical storm watch. So we'll click on one of these. And this is the first tropical storm watch, I believe, that has ever been, uh, or at least since the National Weather Service has existed. This is the first tropical storm watch to be issued for Southern California or for these areas. Maybe the first in Los Angeles. I'm not sure as far as all these areas are concerned, but my understanding it's just the first for any of these areas. So when we click it, you can see that it has what I guess the National Weather Service believes is going to happen. You can see like peak rainfall 3 to 6 inches. Whatever it says here, you can pause it and read. But you know, situation is unfavorable for tornadoes. Okay. Uh, anyway, so let's watch the 18Z play out, and then we'll start at the 0Z and work our way back up because, as I said in the previous videos, once the 18Z loads all the way, the 0Z is no longer going to be available. So, or shortly thereafter, it'll no longer be available. So let's watch this. Hilary makes its landfall, and I also want to point out there's like some tropical moisture out here currently just near Miami, but as Hilary's moving in, you can see that it's moving into the Gulf of Mexico, and the Gulf of Mexico has very high water temperatures. So if something does start to organize, like if this really starts to organize, which the GFS does not currently have on this run, but in other runs it does organize, as you'll see, it could, rapid intensification could happen just as we saw Hurricane Hilary rapidly intensify. I believe the peak winds that they were recording for Hurricane Hilary were 145 miles per hour. A Category 5 hurricane, or typhoon, super typhoon. It depends, on one side. On this side of the world, it's called a typhoon. On this side of the world, it's called a hurricane. On this side over here, it's a tropical cyclone, I think. Any instance, they're all interchangeable. They're synonyms. So, um, a Category 4 or a Category 5 hurricane has winds at 157 miles per hour. So it's not, at 145 miles per hour, the winds are not that far off from uh, Category 5 status, but it isn't expected to significantly increase, and mostly that's because the water as it approaches Los Angeles is a lot cooler, And that being said, it as I was talking about where it makes landfall makes a difference. There's still a cone of uncertainty, so if it's a little bit west, it could stay strong as it makes its landfall. It could be uh, so I believe the last tropical storm to make a landfall over Southern California um, happened in like 1938 or something. And so, it's been 80 plus years. I don't believe a hurricane has ever made landfall in California. I think on in the Fox weather thing they said like you had to go back 150 something years to like the 1800s. I don't even know if you can accurately count that because I mean, at least personally, do they? We have like some consistency in the way we gather data on storms. I'm not sure that that's even um, that you can. Who knows? So, but it's been that long, if ever, that a hurricane has made a landfall in Southern California. I personally think it's really telling that less than a month ago I posted a video where I'm clearly triggering lightning strikes, and it appears as if the weather stuff kicks up around. And again, I, for a while I've been saying, well, the Bible ends with, hey, there's a guy who completes these tasks, and it's seemingly left for anybody, and this person is then sat on the throne of Yahweh after, on the throne of Jesus for Christians. Yahweh is Jesus's father, for going through some situations and overcoming those situations. Uh, and I believe that's me. I don't think you can make an argument for anybody else. And it does seem like, it makes a lot of sense, especially when you see the lightning stuff happening. But, it's been less than a month since I posted that video, and all of a sudden there's a category 4 hurricane headed straight for Los Angeles and Southern California. I think anybody with half a brain, like in a situation that has never happened before, right? This is not something that's common at all. When I say never happened, I guess 150 years ago, maybe a hurricane affected Southern California. It just seems, really obvious to me that it hadn't even been a month since I posted that video, and there is now very clearly a Category 4 hurricane headed straight for Los Angeles. Again, it's probably make landfall as a Category 1 or a tropical storm, but the wind isn't really going to be the issue from this anyway. So, uh, I'd just say probably whatever it is that needs to happen to create a special situation around me so that I'm not disturbed and Yahweh doesn't kick up stuff like this, it would be in the best interest of everybody to do it and to not let people specifically mess with me. As I will say, there are some people that I went to school with who are now living in Palm Springs. And I mean, did they specifically like do something to me? I don't know. Well, I guess we'll see. Whatever happens to Palm Springs, I guess you can look directly to those people. But at the same time, I also feel like there's some janky stuff going on from people coming out of SoCal. I have family in LA, but those families seem to be ignoring that obvious thing where I'm triggering lightning. So this might be a wake up call from Yahweh saying, stop it because people are going to get hurt when you're pretending. Like, what is the point of the Bible if clearly someone meets this stuff at the end and like people don't want to believe it because they don't. I guess I don't match probably in the same way Jesus didn't match what the Jews were expecting, right? The Jewish Messiah to come and be a warrior. Okay, well, do I not match what people were expecting? Well, why don't you just read the end of the book? It seems like I probably match it pretty well, which is, hey, a guy who overcomes these if then conditional statements where people are, I guess, whatever people are doing, there's all sorts of things, and I've made all sorts of comments about it. But okay, let's watch this one more time, and then we'll watch the zero Z. Um, Another thing that I want to point out with this is you can see this down here. Well, guess what forms up? Another large, relatively powerful looking hurricane. It goes off into the west, or it goes off west into the Pacific, but that is what several runs of the of Hurricane Hilary initially did. So I the more hurricanes that spawn up out here, probably the more likely it is that one of them could make another track in this way. So just reasonably, you know, wake up. I don't like stop pretending that there's a guy in Houston that's sitting on the throne of Jesus and Yahweh. Like it's not good for anybody that there's a category 4 hurricane headed straight for Los Angeles, right? I mean, I guess other than it proves my point and seems to validate what I've been saying for anybody with half a brain, but people will still pretend like, oh no, everything's normal. Oh, it's just climate change. I'm sure there's not some narrative which makes it make way more sense around whatever. But okay, anyway, let's go to the zero Z so we can grab it before it disappears. So this is from 12 a.m. this morning. This is what this looks like. Not much has changed. You could see that what moved into. By the way, you can see here's the. Oh, I'm pointing on the thing. Here, you're going to see the moisture from that I was talking about, where it's this tropical moisture that moves into the Gulf. It doesn't really form up, and it just moves over. Uh, you know, Actually, it'll kind of be around here in Houston a little bit, but we won't really see much of it. But it moves into Corpus Christi, San Antonio, at least in this run. And then you can also see in this run, hey, look, something forms up. A hurricane forms up and heads. This one, it has, instead of going out to sea, this one forms up and goes into Mexico. And then, hey, it almost looks like another one wants to. And I think in one of the other runs it does. But also remember later on in these, it's fantasy hours. Like once you're past about this point in the like halfway through, it's fantasy hours, and anything approaching halfway is like, well, you know, about a quarter of the way is what you can say is like that's reliable. Anything halfway is going to start to be like, okay, it's less reliable. There's subject to change. Stuff out here, like 80% of the way through the run is like, well, you can't really trust it that much. However, I will say if something is consistently showing up, like run after run after run after run after run, it, even if it's in the fantasy hours, that is an indicator that like you know the conditions are there. It's just far out, and so who knows. But it's an indicator that it could happen. So again, you see in this one about a little past halfway, you do see another hurricane form up, um, and this tropical moisture kicks up around uh, the Gulf. Okay, let's look at the 6Z. Not much. I mean, like, not much has changed. At this point, we're just watching the same run because we are at the point. But we can see later on, hey, that hurricane forms up. It looks relatively strong. And then another thing looks like it wants to form. Um, so, okay, let's look at the 12Z. Okay, not again, not much has changed in the 12Z. Now you're starting to see, okay, something forms up over here. This is now forming up, I guess, off the Caribbean, and you have later on in the fantasy hours of this a hurricane making a Florida landfall. So, yeah. Uh, and again, something forms up here, but and then goes straight into, runs, like spins up a little bit and runs directly into Mexico. Okay. Um, and we'll look at the 18Z one more time, and then I have some other, I believe the meteorologists would say it's, I have another product for you to look at. But okay, so you can see again this large, it's a pretty large hurricane too. I mean, it's like a, similarly to Hillary, it's relatively large. I mean, it's not as big as Hillary, but it's, it's not tiny. And I guess on this one, you also see something starting to form up in the Gulf, but again, that's fantasy hours. So, okay, now on to things, products, models that are not the GFS. We have the 18Z of the HRRR here, the high res rapid refresh, and it's now starting to show, because it's approaching. It doesn't show anything outside of the United States, pretty much. I mean, the reason it gets this far down on the thing is because Florida's over here. But you can start to see it. It's now entering in. So now this model, which is what is usually used to look at possible weather stuff going on, now it's starting to pick up the, path of Hillary, and you can see it moving here. Uh, Pretty soon, I would say, even there's going to start to be pretty significant rain, I think, that's kicked up. So, moisture, like this is not, these aren't even in the bands, but it's like the preceding moisture. And, you see some like if we zoom in, you're getting purples in here, which is like way, this is a 60 dBz, which is, that's pretty high for this area. Like normally when you're looking at this product, you might see stuff like this, which is like what, 10 dBz maybe, or like even 1D. Like it's nothing. This is just like cloud coverage, whereas this is like significant, when it's starting to get into the purples. And another thing that you'll notice is there is just coverage for days. Like this is only going to be like 48 hours worth, so it's not going to show actually the whole event. But we'll look at the NAM 3 kilometer model here in a second, and it'll give us more because it's a little longer term. It's about 3 days worth almost, or 2.5 days. So you can see that it's very clearly still got the structure, the cyclonic, like hurricane structure. You can see as it's moving forward here, it like half makes a landfall down here, but half of it is still off the coast. You know what I mean? So, um, and like it looks like it's going to go Southern California, like straight between San Diego. I mean, it's gonna ride the coast on San Diego and like up into uh, Los Angeles. So, and then we'll look at one more here. So this is gonna be the NAM 3K. And here you go. So when we look at this, one thing you'll notice too is like the rest of the country, pretty much nothing's happening during this period, which is interesting to me because for the past, like, I don't know how many months, every day pretty much there's been something going on somewhere in the country, right? I mean, I guess there's something going on the West Coast, but pretty much for, like weeks and weeks in a row, uh, legitimately everywhere around the country there has been, like generally there's been stuff. Right now, even it's like the system has set up here, and another, like a low pressure system is set up here on the West Coast, and a high pressure system set up here. and it's like funneling the hurricane directly towards Southern California. So if that's not an obvious like, hey, everything just shifted really quickly so that this hurricane could do this. I mean, okay, so as you see, it's moving forward, and you're starting to see the rain bands like kick up here over Vegas at 7 a.m. on Saturday, and then you're just going to have constant coverage. Like, I mean, this isn't over, and it's at 1 a.m. on the 21st, and the whole system hasn't even reached that area yet. So this is going to be like a multi-day event, which hurricanes usually are. Living here in Houston, I can tell you, uh, like especially a large one like this. So yeah, I will say the structure. You can see like the structure's a lot tighter here, and then as it's moving closer, like once it starts getting over the colder waters, you can see it like starting to fall apart a bit. But it's still, I mean, today they've they made an announcement basically saying like we think that this is going to reach Southern California as a hurricane, which again, that's the first ever. I mean, since there's been recording of named storms, like since storms have been named, and since the National Weather Services exist, like again, the only one to have ever apparently have happened in the 1800s. Like there weren't any national weather services or whatever. Like it's hard, in my opinion, it's hard to even trust the data going back that far. Not that people weren't aware, but it's just like, whether it's consistent with the way we would do things these days. But uh, whether you could measure even wind speed in the same way, I don't know. I'm sure they could, but um, so they definitely didn't have radar data back then. But okay. Um, and so you can see where this thinks that the rain bands are going to be strongest and where the rain's going to be strongest. And yeah, I don't really have anything else to add. I've said what I've said. I don't really have I don't have anything else to say. Uh, yeah, so I'll just end it here. Hope you enjoyed. Have a blessed one. Later. Yeah.